Okay. So we always begin our session with a reading from Baba, and I'm reading from Discourses, pages 48, 49, and 50. So, thought has to be made use of in order to overcome the limitations set up by its own movement. But when this is done, it has itself to be given up. This amounts to the process of going beyond the mind, and this becomes possible through non-identification with the mind or its desires. To look objectively upon the body, as well as all thoughts and lower impulses, is to get established in blissful detachment and to negate all sanskaras. This means freeing the soul from its self-imposed illusions like, I am the body, I am the mind, or I am desire, and gaining ground toward the enlightened stage of I am God. So that paragraph just says it all, and it's so easy to read it, and such a challenge to learn to live it. To overcome the limitations set up by the movement of thought. And so then Baba goes on to say, control of the habitual tendencies of the mind is much more difficult than control of physical actions. The fleeting and evasive thoughts and desires of the mind can be curbed only with great patience and persistent practice. And I just want to emphasize those words of Baba's because, patience and practice are so key for us. And of course, we like to remember longing too, our longing to be one with him. It gives the fuel for this fire of just burning up our sanskaras and being one with him. And then he goes on to say, but the restraint of mental processes and reactions is necessary to check the formation of new sanskaras and to wear out or unwind the old sanskaras of which they are expressions. Though control might be difficult at the beginning, through sincere effort, it gradually becomes natural and easy to achieve. Control is deliberate and involves effort as long as the mind is trying to decondition itself through the removal of sanskaras. But after the mind is released from the sanskaras, control becomes spontaneous because the mind is then functioning in freedom and understanding. And I'm just going to stop here for a minute. So we're all in that phase of developing these habits. And, the outcome then is this functioning in freedom and understanding. So that's something we can aspire to. Such control is born of strength of character and health of the mind. And it invariably brings with it freedom from fear and immense peace and calmness. The mind, which appears feeble when it is wanton and uncontrolled in its functioning, becomes a source of great strength when it is controlled. Control is indispensable for the conservation of mental energy and the economical use of thought force for creative purposes. However, if control is purely mechanical and aimless, it defeats its own purpose, which is to make possible the free and unconditioned functioning of the mind. Control that has true spiritual value does not consist in the mechanical repression of thoughts and desires, but is the natural restraint exercised by perception of positive values discovered during the process of experience. True control is therefore not merely negative. When some positive values come within the focus of consciousness, their claims for being expressed in life generate mental response and energy that ultimately remove all the tendencies obstructing a free and full expression of these values. Thus, the tendencies for lust, greed, and anger are removed through an appreciative recognition of the value of a life of purity, generosity, and kindness. So, would anybody like to share any thoughts they have from that reading? I just find it so inspiring.
Want me to be honest?
I do.
Part of the time when you're reading, I thought, screw it. I can't do any of that. Baba, you either help me or I'm not even going to try. And then towards the end of it, I thought, well, I'm sort of doing some of that, you know, but it's like challenging. That's all.
Well, and that's so true. It's so challenging. And, you know, I keep saying we're all in this together. And it's just nice to reinforce what we're working towards, that we are going to find this peace and freedom once our mental, you know, our mind is laid to rest. And I can only say that through years of doing this practice, I can really feel that the difference in that I don't believe my thoughts like I used to. And I just say, when you really feel like that, notice what you're thinking and believing, and then take that to inquiry, you know. And you know, we've talked about this before. It really is about patience. I mean, anger has been one of my main issues that I've worked on, and patience is what arises when we transform our anger. We become more patient and tolerant. And my tendency is still anger, you know, like when somebody drives on the wrong side of the road or whatever, and I'm just like, I just notice that I feel angry. So I get it, but it's just a raw energy. And when we can channel that anger and direct it, and like Baba was saying in that reading, we've developed this habit of trying to control our negative tendencies, and we slowly but surely do better. So it's a choice. Anybody else have any comments? Okay. So I'm going to read a little bit of Effort and Grace on misconceptions that is really important for our work that we're doing. We're judging Baba. We started last week, and we're continuing this week to just, in the Sufi tradition of putting out complaints against our master. And the reason we do it is because then we're able to see our own blind spot. We know ultimately when we're judging Baba or God or life or whatever, that it's really all about us, but it really helps to project it out there consciously, get it down on paper, and just unravel it. So this is what Darwin has to say about misconceptions, and this is from pages 21 and 22 of Effort and Grace. Perhaps most of our lives as spiritual seekers is spent consciously or unconsciously trying to correct the latent misconceptions that have been plaguing us from the subconscious level of our minds. When we probe each of our own particular misconceptions to its foundation, we discover that we have been coping with wrong answers for most of our lives. We have accepted as facts things that are simply not true. We have been brought up with the fundamental misconceptions that the creation is real and that we are individual limited creatures. And so right from the beginning, we take it all for granted. There are many misconceptions that we take to be a part of our ordinary lives, not realizing that they are misconceptions and that they are distorting our inner awareness. As seekers of truth, we have to see through the misconceptions and what they cause, and replace all that with what is the nearest we can come to the truth itself. We cannot add truth to the misconceptions. Misconceptions can include the tendency to imagine things and to follow trains of thought. Sometimes, before we even get out of bed, a certain train of thought has already left the station, and we are not even aware that this has happened. When we first wake up in the morning, the mind gets activated, and we present it with a train of thoughts, which leads us into other trains of thought, and they produce what becomes the content of our day. So we get involved in following these trains of thought instead of taking control and initiating a wisely chosen train of thought. Misconceptions also can involve low self-esteem based on an incorrect assessment of who and what we really are. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, is a very profound and philosophically revealing statement. Our everyday thinking, our beliefs, and the limitations that we accept are all part of the bondage that we experience. We start with a conclusion from our subconscious and our observations, and then look for signs confirming our conclusion, which in turn solidify that conclusion. So isn't that amazing? And if you have any thoughts, please share them now. And welcome to Anne. It's nice to see you there next to Robin.
Thanks.
Yeah. Have you noticed how you can get out of bed in the morning and the train of thoughts has already left the station? Anybody ever noticed that? Yeah. So it's really wonderful then, you know, I have a habit of asking Baba as soon as I wake up and right before I go to sleep. Let's see, what do I say? I say, now my mind is going blank. I entrust all of my thoughts, words, and deeds to Baba, you know, the good and the bad deeds, and I just entrust them into his care. And it really helps me. And I do that in the morning too. And, you know, whatever works, very individual, you know, it's really helpful at those times when we're going to sleep and waking up to just really ask him, you know, to be with us.
I couldn't go to sleep last night.
Okay, so last week, I have to find the worksheet. We started doing a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet on Baba, and we worked on it together in the circle and came up with Baba makes it hard to find himself in everyone. That was something that we could all get on board with. There's just certain people that we notice it's really hard to find Baba in them. And so we're going to amplify that theme. That first statement becomes the theme of our entire worksheet. And so this week we're working on what we want. And so this week we're going to work on, I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone. And so, and I'll repeat that again, but if you weren't here last week, what you need to do is find a situation, find someone for whom it's really hard for you to see Baba in them. And that will be important because that's what you will refer back to during the inquiry session today. And so I'm going to say the statement again if you want to write it down. I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone. And actually, before we start, I'm going to read you one more quote from the Sufi book, Catching the Thread, by Llewellyn Von Lee, that is really appropriate for the work we're doing, projecting onto our master. This is all Jungian psychology, you know, the unconscious can only become conscious through projection. And we project our good stuff and our negative stuff. And so anyway, so today it's from pages 216 and 17 of Catching the Thread. A teacher is a mirror in which the seeker can first glimpse, then slowly become familiar with, and finally recognize his real self. The teacher sees this inner potential from the very beginning, and whatever the outer appearance relates directly to this essence. The relationship of the true teacher to the seeker is one of love from essence to essence. As such, it can never change, but is always complete. Love cannot be more or less for the teacher. For him, the very beginning and the end are the same. It is a closed circle. His love for the disciple does not go on increasing. For the disciple, of course, it is very different. He has to complete the whole circle. As the disciple progresses, he feels the master nearer and nearer as the time goes on. But the master is not nearer. He was always near, only the disciple did not know it. The teacher embraces the whole of the seeker, accepts him in his entirety without judgment and without comparison. The teacher takes the seeker from where he is standing and through the process of reflection guides him on the path back to himself. Seeing the full potential of the seeker, the teacher holds that potential regardless of whatever self-doubts the seeker may have. Even when the seeker seems to fail or deviate from the path, the teacher still believes in his spiritual capability, his capacity to be filled with God, and holds that belief as in trust until the seeker is able to realize it for himself. The teacher can never reject the seeker, just as God can never reject a human being, for we are all part of him. At times, the teacher needs to be hard and cruel, even to appear to reject the seeker, but this is only to help the seeker to grow. The master must be strict, he has to be hard, because he wants the disciple to reach the highest state. So,
Well, I think you need to go out. You haven't been out for a long time.
so if anybody has anything they'd like to say about that reading, please feel free. I'd love to hear everyone sharing their thoughts, no matter what they are.
What are you reading from, Effort and Grace, or what?
This one was called Catching the Thread, and it's a Sufi teacher, writer, Llewellyn Von Lee. And so he, he's in the Sufi tradition, and of course, we know Baba said if he ever embraced an ism, it would be Sufism. That was the one dearest to his heart, and I feel very drawn to Sufism myself, just because I love the lover-beloved relationship. And yeah, and also in terms of doing the work on Baba, it's very much in line with the Sufi tradition of the complaints against the teacher, and of course Bao has written a lot of ghazals in that vein. Okay, so if you haven't been here before, I'm not going to explain what the work is, but it will be self-evident as I take you through inquiry. And what we do is it's really meditation. And so when I ask the question, you just drop into your inner wisdom, the voice of your heart, Baba's voice in our heart, our intuition, and let the answer arise. And you can't do it wrong. There's no wrong answers. Okay. So, is it true that you want Baba to make it easier to see him in everyone? Is that true? And when you find your answer, you can just shout out a yes or a no.
Yes.
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 It would be nice.
Yeah. Okay, and then the second question for those of us who said yes, then we go to number 2. If you said no, then you would just go on to the third question. Now on this second question, I actually want you to contemplate for a full 60 seconds before you respond, because there's what's called the interpreter in the left hemisphere of the brain that always feels like it knows the answer. And the work takes us beyond that particular interpreter part of the brain. We're looking for a more whole brain awareness. And so it takes time to contemplate. And then it also allows the heart to give its response. So here's question 2. I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone. Can you absolutely know that that's true? And just contemplate that. No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Now, why would we say no? Some of us said no, that we couldn't absolutely know that it's true, that we want Baba to make it easier for us to see him and everyone. Does anybody want to comment on how you came up with a no?
I would comment.
Thank you, Tina.
Well, I'm a fan of the president, and I guess I know we're not supposed to talk about politics, but this is not the center. But anyway, I find myself wishing him harm, wishing he had the virus, and so forth.
So what I noticed when I was contemplating it, what came up for me was, I just know that Baba has this whole creation worked out perfectly. And if I want, and if I asked him to make it easier for me to see him and everyone, I just was so aware that I wouldn't be able to recognize my shadow. I wouldn't be able to withdraw my projection and my, my own shadow from that person that I was wanting, it to be easier to see Baba in. And so that was what came up for me, why I said no. And I hadn't really realized that before, but I really do trust that, he's got this whole thing, perfectly figured out, and that my perspective has still the ego coloration on it. So
That's why I said no too.
oh, okay, thank you, Robin.
I don't know if I could use all those words for it, but basically that he's got it the way he wants it, and if he makes it easier, it may not work as well eventually or something like that.
Yeah, it's just not meant to be easy, is it? Unfortunately, at least we get our moments where, there's always moments in the day that are just easy, and I'm always grateful for that. Okay. Anybody else want to share anything before we go on to question 3?
Yeah, I was thinking of that also as regards Trump. Baba spoke through Narina Machiavelli at different times, and one of the lines that came was helpful to me, and it says love to love, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
To love me and those who do but obscure the view of divine indispensable works use, be indifferent. It says, let it have in its own view's way one all outcome. And somehow that end product, let it have in its view's way one all outcome, helped me, because I was literally mad when someone said that Shelley Marish had seen Trump coming out of Baba's room in India. And my reaction was, I says, yeah, Baba kicked him out. So I definitely had a problem with having him as a leader,
Uh-huh.
But that line did help me. I thought, wow.
Yeah. The mind cannot comprehend non-duality, and our goal here is to go beyond the mind. And so whenever we get triggered by someone, it's showing us where our shadow is. And when we're perfectly clear, nothing will trigger us. And that doesn't mean we don't have discrimination. And I would say across the entire political spectrum, it's very easy to see the pros and cons across the whole spectrum. And I believe that's why Baba didn't want his lovers or his mandali to be involved in politics, because it's really one of the most dualistic things there is on earth, you know, besides male female. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Rosalie. So let's move on to question 3. How do you react? What happens when you're believing the thought that you want Baba to make it easier for us to see him in everyone? How do you react? Now, Diantha's just put up the sub-questions for this number 3 question. And these sub-questions actually help us really hone in on how we react when we're believing the thought. So notice what emotions you're feeling when you're believing the thought, I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone. Everybody take a moment and identify the emotion that you're feeling, and please share it if you're willing.
Feel weak.
Wow.
I feel is a welling up within me of good feelings. And when I think that Baba was wanting to help me love everybody, with that, there's also the thought that you don't have to like everyone.
So true.
It's the idea that you love the Baba in them, because Baba is in everyone, but you don't have to like them, like their behavior, which is different than their essence. And so
Yes.
I just felt really great, the emotion that came up when I thought of Baba helping me to really love the people that I can't love.
Well, thank you, Anne. So what happened for you was you went right to question 4. Who would you be without the thought? So in question 3, for those of us who are still processing this, we find the negative emotions, but you really made a very important point, which is that we can love someone without condoning their behavior. And, you know, Katie's famously said, until you can love Hitler, your work isn't done. And of course, that doesn't mean we condone his behavior. But somehow we do need to find that what you just said, and we have to be able to find that we can love everyone, because Baba is in everyone. So anybody else, did you notice an emotion that you were feeling when you were believing the thought, I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone?
I do have a question, just because I'm new to this process, but what if that's something that you never thought of before? You're just posing and we're to relate to it?
Yes, so the idea is that you're just allowing a space for your inner wisdom to contemplate the question, and then the answer will arise. And it's a way of going more into the body awareness, emotions, sensations, and the heart also, rather than just being stuck in the mental patterns.
So that is something that I might have thought of, you know, that might be in my consciousness, you mean?
Well, when you do this self-inquiry, you just learn to trust whatever arises. Sometimes an image will arise, you know, a memory from the past, and you'll make a connection between the stressful thought and something from your childhood that wasn't resolved. That's often the case. I mean, it's a little different because we're doing the work on our beloved Baba right now, but usually if we're doing the work on people in our physical life, memories from our childhood will arise, because what we do is we tend to project our unresolved issues from childhood onto the people in our current life.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so I discovered that the work is really a process for identifying the projection. So that's identifying the stressful thought, and then withdrawing it through responding, through answering these questions. We're actually withdrawing the projection and integrating it. And you'll see when we get to the turnarounds, we start owning something in ourself that we were projecting onto the other. And it's deep work and it's hard work, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's really the reason that I have been offering these sessions is because it's a practice that can become an internal habit that supports us ultimately in just coming closer to Baba. That's the whole purpose of this work, you know, for me.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's good. And also this whole time with Corona and our whole political nightmare, you know, it's like, it brings up, everything's like coming to the surface, you know.
Yes. And
so it's good, yeah.
And so when we find that place of complete trust that Baba's got it all under control, we don't have to experience anything as a nightmare. We just become, so what the work does is it helps us learn to live from our witness. We become the objective observer of everything that's going on in our life and in the world. And it becomes more and more clear that this world was projected. Like Baba says, Maya is the necessary medium for God realization. And we get more and more clear that this whole world is projected just for our awakening.
Yeah.
And so we stop believing our reactions and we start withdrawing those triggers and integrating. And then, you know, it's a whole different way of living, and we become much more dead to this world and alive to Baba. And that's the process that we're living in. And I can only say that these last 10 years have just given me a much kinder way to live. And I always felt that Baba brought me the work when I was suffering very intensely. And I've felt like it's been a bridge for me to come closer to him. And so what we do in question 3 is we really start noticing, it's like our bodies, which is like the lowest vibration. You know, we have our energy, our emotional body, our mental body, our physical body, but it is an instrument for us. And the more empty it becomes, the more we can just identify the emotions and sensations, and we don't try to get rid of them. We actually just sit with them, because, and the neuroscientists have shown this scientifically, that no emotion lasts more than 60 to 90 seconds. Something will shift if we really feel deeply the pain of it all that we've been resisting for years. You know, a lot of us have stored pain from our early childhood, and the good news is there is an end to it. And as we sit more and more with the uncomfortable emotions and sensations, we're able to just be an instrument to allow these things to pass through us and be a much clearer instrument for loving Baba, really, for just loving Baba and being with him more and more. So that's the reason that we notice the emotions and sensations. They do pass, and more will come, but it's like another habit we have to develop. And the key is to not identify. Not only are we not our thoughts, which Baba clearly states in the discourses, we are also not our emotions or our sensations. And really, at the core of our being, our essence is love. That's the only thing that's real. Underneath all pain, sorrow, grief, love is underneath all of it. And we just have to trust that more and more. And that's what gives us the courage to just keep going. on this journey. So another sub-question is, so whose business are you in when you're believing the thought that you want Baba to make it easier for you to see him in everyone? And this is something that we started out with. The 3 kinds of business is one of the fundamental principles in the work of Byron Katie. And what she discovered is that every time she left her own business, she suffered. So just notice when you're suffering whose business you're in. So right now we're in Baba's business. We're really wanting Baba to do something different, you know, when we're believing that we want him to make it easier for us. So now another sub-question that's oftentimes useful is, how do you treat Baba when you're believing that thought? So these are not easy questions, but they're worthy of contemplation. How are we treating Baba when we're believing the thought that we want him to make it easier for us to see him in everyone? How are we treating him? And please just pipe up with your answers when you find something. I just noticed I'm treating him like someone I want to manipulate. Oops, not so good.
I found that
Baba, we're taking advantage of him. Instead of wants, taking advantage of him. I guess that's the thing, taking advantage.
Yes.
I found that I was just letting him
rather than his way.
Oh, I guess when, no.
They can hear you, but when 2 people. Try it again.
I'm going to put my earphones in because I can't hear everything, and it's all, you know, I want to hear it all.
I think I was talking.
It's done now.
Hey. Oh, why am I hearing music? That was weird.
I might have one of my YouTubes on.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
here, sorry.
I would just love to hear what people said, you know, over the last minute or so, because I couldn't hear it.
I felt that I was really allowing Baba to help me in that way. It was not manipulating or anything like that. It was like opening myself up to his help.
Beautiful. Thank you. Did anybody else say something that I missed?
I thought we were taking advantage of Baba. I felt like if he's making it easier for us, does he really want to make it easy? It's kind of like being flown up to the top of the mountain. Baba
Yes.
really to do the work and see that.
Yeah, yeah, good to notice.
And
I feel like in asking him to reveal that to me so easily was treating him like he wasn't trustworthy, that he was doing his thing, you know, and that I didn't need to understand it, but
Yeah.
I didn't trust him.
I just find it so interesting to contemplate these questions and to have this discussion. It feels very fruitful to me. Anybody else have anything to say about how you treat Baba when you're believing that thought?
Well, in a way, I think Baba is the ultimate know-it-all. I mean, if we believe he is who we believe he is, you know, he knows everything, you know, so it's, but I have this thing where I say, in certain situations, it may be your will, Baba, but I don't have to like it. So it's just my little venting.
Yeah, yeah.
My little way to vent, you know.
Yes.
And, you know, and I do hop to the future because Baba did say something about 3/4 of the world will be destroyed. And, you know, I can't forget that, you know, and I thought, well, I don't want to be around when it happens. I want to be on the other side. Yeah, just but whatever, it's up to Baba.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the less we identify with our gross bodies, the less it even becomes an issue whether 3/4 of the world is destroyed. You know,
Yeah.
the less, I just find the less I identify with the physical, you know, it's just easier. This world it is an illusion, even though it seems so physical and concrete. It's really not. Now let's just notice, how do we treat ourselves when we're believing the thought that we want Baba to make it easier for us to see him in everyone? How are we treating ourselves when we're believing that thought? And just sit for a minute and just contemplate that. So it's interesting, because what came up for me right away was that I'm treating myself like I'm a baby and I want special consideration, you know? I don't want to play by these rules. So that was kind of interesting to see that arose for me.
What came up for me is just, I'm buying into the illusion.
Yeah.
Because if it's that difficult, then I'm in it fully. You know, that this person is difficult and I can't see Baba in them, and it's Baba's fault for making it hard. You know, it's like, okay, I'm fully into it.
Yeah.
You're treating yourself like this is really happening.
Yeah, right. This is too real.
I felt like I was opening myself to Baba as a loving father. And that's amazing to me, because I've had 2 fathers, neither of whom were loving, and I didn't think I know what a loving father was.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, generally in the work, we only question the stressful thoughts, but I love all of your beautiful thoughts that you're sharing, Anne. You know, and that's great. And if you don't have any stressful thoughts, you know, hooray. That's great. Yeah.
I have a comment. It's Thursday.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I've been here the whole time. Well, most of the time, because I've,
He's
traveled.
a lurker. That's why.
Yeah, I'm handling about 20 balls in the air, but at any rate, the thought that comes to me is I'm separating myself from Baba. You know, if I am with him in the whole drama that he's enacting through me and others, if I decide I don't like this finger, and it's really like everybody else is parts of my own body. If I'm deciding this finger and I want it gone or be different, I'm separating myself from that part of my body. So it's creating a lack of wholeness perspective.
Thank you. Okay. So sometimes it's just helpful to notice, what do you fail to see? And of course, some of the responses have already answered that, but just look inside of yourself and see if there's anything else about what am I failing to see when I'm believing that thought that I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone. And just see if anything else shows up. I often ask this question to clients because it's a really great segue into question number 4. Who would you be without the thought? Because it's really hard sometimes for clients to get to question 4 without this sub-question. What am I failing to see when I'm believing that thought? that I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone.
Well, I'm failing to see that the illusion game is to be able to get beyond that, to have that challenge of trying to remember who they are when they're not acting that way from my perspective or my needs, my wishes.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, and I'm failing to see that this whole thing is just set up perfectly, you know, so that I can find my freedom. And if I'm believing that thought, I'm trying to circumvent my shadow work. It's like, what am I not willing to see about myself when I'm finding it so difficult to see Baba in someone else? You know, there's something I'm not willing to look at in myself, and I'm failing to see that when I'm wanting him to make it easier. Does anybody else have any thoughts before we go on?
I feel like I'm returning the prasad he's giving me.
Oh,
Wow.
oh my goodness. That just really landed right in my heart. Thank you.
I'm failing to see his divinity because I think because I'm putting a judgment to make it easier for me. I'm failing to see that divine reason why everything is in place the way it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Like Don Stevens going to change to be a teacher, that kind of idea. Like, you have no idea why I put you here. That.
Exactly. It's just totally beyond our ability because it is beyond the mind. You know, we have to go beyond the mind to, I mean, I can't even use words to describe what it would be like, you know, to live without that limited mind. But anyway. All right, let's go on to question 4. Who would you be without the thought that you want Baba to make it easier for, wait a minute. I want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone. Who are you without that thought? And just share it when you find it.
A better disciple.
Thank you.
Liberated.
Yeah, I feel a lot more peaceful and accepting.
More surrendered to his will.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the turnarounds. So, Diantha, will you be able to post the turnarounds? Okay, super. So the turnarounds are really ways to expand our mind. And we do turnarounds to the self, to the other, and to the opposite. So as you can see here, we have to find examples for the turnaround to the self. I want me to make it easier for me to see my real self in me. That's a complete turnaround to ourself. So the way we do this work is that we have our ego self, and then we have our real self, the self with a capital S. And so ponder an authentic, genuine example of, I want me to make it easier for me to see my real self in me. And when you find an example and you're willing, please do share it.
I just like want him to wave a magic wand and make it all go away. And because I just don't feel I have the power to do anything on my own without him.
Well, but you know the concept of effort and grace. I mean, it's a big topic, but at least in my experience, I feel like it feels appropriate for me to make effort. And then I know that Baba's grace is really what the gift is. So for example, in this situation, what came to me was, so this is a specific example. I found it really easier for me to see my real self in me this morning when I just randomly decided to watch an interview, or it was not an interview, but it was Anne Conlon. Mayor Center had put it up as a video that of her just telling her Baba story. And it just made it so easy for me to see my real self in me. So one of the ways I can do that is by participating in whatever Baba activities really nurture me and inspire my heart. And I was laughing and crying, and I was smiling, and I was in bliss. I mean, she really knocked it out of the park for me. So that's a one specific example. When I can find the material, you know, because there's so much to choose from with Baba, certain ones just bring me really closer to my real self, which of course is Baba in me. Does anybody else have an example? And it could be how you make it easier to see your real self, or when you do something.
Well, I try to do a lot of dancing.
Do what?
Dancing.
Oh, I love that.
Upbeat music.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
feel like Baba has been sending me back to school with all these classes on the Circle Center.
Yes. Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Has some gifts to focus on.
Oh, yeah. I love it when you said that about dancing, because last night my husband and I were watching a Krishna Das program, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he just makes, I just have to get up and dance, and I feel so happy. I feel like that's my real self, you know, and sometimes I get so serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shake it off.
Dancing, yes.
And
all these
sometimes
programs.
I like just dance naked to some really upbeat song.
Hey, whatever works, right?
I like that
Anybody
song
else?
by Pharrell Williams, Happy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess I come closer with prayer meditation, with light. That's where I feel the closest to my real self. And
beautiful.
Just like Tina does it with dancing. So it's just trying to carry that over into other areas.
Yes.
Or to access it more easily and quickly, you know, when I need it.
And I've been mostly touched by the amazing music, Baba music from the heart, you know, any kind of music that takes you beyond the mind to the heart, you know.
Yes, yes, music is so powerful, so powerful. So there's all kinds of ways, and it's, you know, some of it's pretty universal and some of it is specific for each of us, and it's a beautiful thing that we can individually find whatever it is that connects us more deeply to our true self. So let's move on to the turnaround to the other. So that would be, I want me to make it easier for me to see Baba in everyone. So instead of asking Baba to make it easier for us to see him in everyone, how can we make it easier for ourselves to see Baba in everyone? And my first example comes up is by doing this inquiry. This is really helping me to internalize how valuable it is to spend time on this particular subject, because I think we all pretty much found that there's always somebody who can challenge us, you know, to see Baba in them. And if anybody else has an example, please share.
Say the question again, please.
I want me to make it easier for me to see Baba in everyone. So this is called the turnaround to the other, and it always starts with an I statement. So we're putting the responsibility in on ourselves. How can I make it easier for me to see Baba in everyone?
I think to let go of judgments. Let go of judgments and preconceived notions of why or what.
Yes. And that's really valuable. And I can just hear Byron Katie saying, and give me a specific example. So generally, yes, judgments. So can you find one specific judgment that you can catch when it arises where, you know, I want me to make it easier for me to see Baba in this particular person?
Well, for me, it's like, how did I possibly expect to know what that person's life experience has been up to that moment, where when they triggered, when they happen to trigger me? You know, I mean, it's just opening the heart more to it, more compassionate self, accepting self, and realizing it's not personal. It's about individuals striving to uncover who they are. And in that process, they get tangled up in a jumbled mess. And I just happened to be passing by. And my foot got caught in the tangle of their web and my own web.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's really freeing both of us, both me and the person that triggered me.
Yes. Yes.
It's up to me to try to surrenderance to Baba, not try to figure it out and work at it from a human standpoint, but just to give it all over to him.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's really, yeah. Surrender,
and
surrender.
I can see that, you know, when I am triggered by someone, then I go into my defensive posture. And from that, it's harder to see them with love and open to Baba in them. So.
Yes. And that's really what the whole practice of the work is about, is to just notice what triggers us. And then, you know, to find in ourselves, you know, we can work full time just staying in our own business and not worrying about what other people are doing, you know, as long as we just keep catching the triggers that stimulate us and yeah. So it just becomes a whole different way to live, doesn't it?
I think the main thing I'm getting from it is how much I really do want that to not just be some miracle from, you know, Baba in the sky. I want it to be from Meher Baba, who's inside of me and resides in my heart, and who is my true self. And I want that to be empowered, that whole like concept.
Yes.
To pay more attention to that my heart can open up to this person if I have that power. Capital S self, me, I don't know, it gets a little confusing, but I like it. I like taking it back and not having it be just like, get me through this, please, Baba, like to actually like empower my true self to take the reins and to turn toward beauty and do that like without having to feel like I'm so desperately begging for for help. I want to be able to.
Well, what you just said reminds me of what we talked about last week, that also it's okay to remove ourselves from a difficult relationship or situation. We can also just excuse ourselves. We don't have to stay with somebody who's really, really hard for us. I mean, and in the past weeks, we've talked about, you know, like really empathic people can tend to take on a lot of stuff. And so boundaries, honest boundaries, and learning how to give an honest no are also part of the mix of all of this. And we can still look for Baba in everyone and take care of ourselves at the same time when we need to, when we need to just, you know, excuse ourselves. So let's move on to the turnaround to the opposite. And I've heard so many profound awarenesses to this already, but let's look at it. I don't want Baba to make it easier for me to see him in everyone. And I think it's become pretty clear just throughout this inquiry how that could be truer than our original statement. And if anybody has more awarenesses to share, please feel free to do that at this time.
I would say I like to keep that option open. I'm thinking about the other, but you know, if he made it easier, fine.
Oh, yeah. Well, and do you find that just from looking at these ways of turnarounds, do you find that it just gives you a bigger picture of the possibilities?
Yeah, and also but I like what you were saying. Sometimes you just have to remove yourself from being around a certain person.
Yeah, so we do have to take care of ourselves. You know, we're the person who's here to take care of ourselves too. And but I find, so the turnaround to the opposite, you know, Byron Katie will always say, because reality rules, you know, she calls God reality. And she says, I don't want anything other than reality. So if what we're experiencing is that it's difficult to see him in everyone, then good, because that's my path to freedom, you know, because it's my own, I'm, you know, how does Hafez say it? You know, I'm the veil. I'm the veil. Everything is just perfect, you know, but I'm the veil. So yeah, we want to realize God really honestly, and every little jot and tittle needs to be taken care of. And like Baba says, you know, once God realization happens, you know, it's like it's all worth it. You know, nobody looks back and goes, oh, well, that was too hard. And I remind myself of that quite often, because it does often seem too hard and I get kind of weary. But, you know, it's like, you know, I think of Baba and the provisional ego. You know, our own ego gets weary. But as long, if we can start moving to that provisional ego with Baba, then, you know, sometimes it's closer and sometimes it's farther away, but he's certainly given us so much. He's given us, you know, his words and his, you know, his lovers, how we have each other to share with and to encourage each other and to support each other. So that's the end of our inquiry today. And so we have a little extra time. So I think what I'd like to do is just talk to you about the next few weeks. So what I've decided to do is to finish this inquiry on Baba for the next 2 weeks. We'll do, you know, the advice we would give him next week and what we need, what we believe we need from him. And then we're going to take a break until, I don't know until when, but at least until the fall. But there's many inquiry circle sessions that are recorded. And so if anybody feels the need for it, you know, it's always useful to go back and work with them. And I realized I'm at the busiest time of my year because of, I run a B&B and I also have a garden that I tend to, and I'm just needing a break. So I'm going to take a break until the fall after we finish Baba. So we have 2 more weeks after this. And I said this all the time, but I love to hear your thoughts and ideas if you want to continue on and what you would like to work on. And I do have a note from something that you said last week, Fareshte, And I loved it. What is this headache you created for yourself? And I've really been sitting with that. And I actually was thinking, oh, we could try and work it into this particular worksheet we're doing. But it's a whole separate thing. And it's also, I think, very philosophical. And so it could be an inquiry, but it could also just be a deep conversation, you know, about Baba's cosmology. And so I think it would be wonderful to spend some time with that. So if anybody wants to think about, what is this headache you created for yourself, Baba? I mean, it's a mystery, isn't it? Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on that for us today?
Oh gosh, no, not at this stage, but it certainly came as a big wave. It periodically comes to me that this beautiful infinite God continues this, Maya, indefinitely. And I don't understand it, really. I mean, without it, we would be without anything. And with it, we are full of headaches and joys and bliss and troubles. So I guess, you know, I mean, if there was no story, then what would be the point of it all? But I'm curious from his perspective as to why it's, oh God, I don't even know. It's inconceivable, considering the whole thing is in the realm of imagination and Maya, and reality is something different. And he wants to re-experience this reality through each and every drop soul. I don't know. He's a masochist and a lover. I don't know.
I know. Well, I think it would be really fun to spend a session just even talking about it, and then because I'm trained, to notice stressful thoughts. I could write down stressful thoughts that come out of just that conversation, and then we could take those to inquiry. But you know, if anybody feels like doing any research and finding, you know, things that Baba's referred to about his creation and this headache that he's created, I just think it would be fascinating. So that's just the one thought I have. Does anybody else?
I like it when we can apply it to our lives rather than being theoretical.
Rather than what?
Than being very theoretical. I like it more practical, so, you know, we can apply it to our lives.
Okay. You mean like our daily physical plane lives?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's really valuable too, and we can certainly do that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Well, you know, in a way, it's not that theoretical because it's the mini story of our lives that continues to happen to infinity. So if we can accept the big picture and kind of come to peace with it, we can come to peace with our own story, perhaps.
Yes, yes. Well, and so I don't know so much about your work, but I know that you, Diantha had said you do Hafez translation work. And,
yeah.
You know, maybe if you felt like it, you could share some of that, and maybe we could tie, I don't know. I'm just kind of putting ideas out there, but.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to just, I mean, I don't know, we can do inquiry, but we can also just have conversations. And I feel like I need this break because I feel like I need to go into more of a receptive mode to just listen to Baba and get inspired and see what comes forth. And if he wants me to keep doing inquiry circles, and I'm just so open and not attached to anything. So, you know, it's also really wonderful if anybody has thoughts they want to share with me of anything they would like.
Would you mind putting your email in the chat box? I don't think I have your email.
Oh, could you do that, Diantha? Could you put my email? It's just Anne with an E. What?
Oh, Anne with an E.
at kindreality.com.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, my website is Kind Reality. That's for the work I do. And I have a little Baba quote on there, just so that people get to hear his name, that I do the work with. But only a few clients have I ever shared about Baba with, where it just seemed like it was the right thing.
I guess I'll stop recording now if you.
Well, I have a final quote, and then yes, I guess we could stop recording. So let me see. Oh, here. And this might even spark a little conversation, who knows? This is from The Real Treasure. So, about divine will and free will. And it says, the following is what Mani had to say on free will and divine will. You see, it's like a train journey. Once the journey begins, you are stuck with whatever baggage you have. This baggage represents your samskaras. Divine will represents the route. You can't alter the route of the journey. The train takes a fixed route to its destination. Your free will is only restricted to what you can do on the train. Either you can look out the window, play cards, chat with your fellow passengers, and go to sleep or read a book. Although the options are many and the activity you do on the train may give you a sense that you can alter your journey, yet it is not the case. Your life, the beginning and end, and the route it takes is fixed by the divine will. What you do on the fixed route is your free will. How you accept the events in your life, the people who are supposed to meet you, how you interact with them, that is your free will. Which is interesting because that's really what we're working on, is how we interact with other people, even if only in our thoughts. And Mani goes on to say that Baba said, it is this free will that will decide your next journey and the baggage you will carry on it. So you see, there is very little one can do to avoid the major events, whether they are mishaps or successes, from happening. These have already been ordained for you based on your past sanskaras or actions of your past life. However, there is one thing that you can do. Accept these events joyfully and gracefully, filling up every moment with Baba's remembrance. If you do this successfully, not only will his remembrance soften the impact of the mishaps or other bad events that are meant to occur in your life, but eventually it will finish off your journey once and for all. It will take you to the final goal of all journeys, after which you have to journey no more. Isn't that amazing?
Yep.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Baba. Gosh.
Wow.
And this is from, I don't know, other people get it. Eric Solobaki, he sends Baba quotes that I get in my inbox every day. And it's always amazing because it's always like perfect. One of them that week is just perfect for the inquiry circle. And it was really ideal for our conversation about effort and grace, free will and fate. And, so now we've got that metaphor with the train and the train tracks. And yeah, there's a lot of fate that we have to, live through, but we do have free will within that. And we're so fortunate to have Baba.
One last thing I wanted to say is how much richer I feel, even though it's been a tough period for everyone. Personally, I feel so much more enriched by the quality of our interactions with one another. There's far less idle chatter and far more true, genuine interconnectedness and remembrance. So, you know, there's always a positive side to everything that we have to hold on to more.
Well, I absolutely feel that way too, because I live in rural Montana, and you know, my big lament is, oh, poor me, I'm a Baba lover and I don't have anybody here. And then, you know, with the pandemic, it just made it so easy to offer the virtual inquiry circle and be able to share what I just felt like Baba wanted me to share, and then to participate in so many of these events that, you know, the Circle of Friends has hosted. It's just phenomenal. And now, you know, Meher Center is giving really rich sharings more and more. So it is really interesting, you know.
And thank you.
Feel our oneness, you know.
Yeah, thank you for all the thoughts you've put into creating this for us.
Yes.
Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
You're so welcome, and thank you so much for coming and sharing, and I'm very grateful for everything.
Are people coming to your bed and breakfast?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been we've done. This is our 3rd year, and we thought, oh, nobody's going to come, but you know, everybody just wants to. So Montana is the 4th largest state, and there's only 1 million people that live in the state, and so, like, I live, like, you know, so rurally, and then Yellowstone Park is just 25 minutes down a 2-lane highway. And then the park opened, and they're doing social distancing and making it work, and people are just dying to get out. And so it's really working for people, and they're so grateful. Yeah.
That's great.
So, yeah. So, you know, running that and then just keeping up our property. We have 1.5 acres, and I just love the summer's so beautiful, but it's very arid here. So I do a lot of watering and gardening and, you know, I've always done that just for myself, but now I have a more responsibility to keep it up for the guests who come, you know, and it's all separate. They're in a separate floor. They have their own entrance and everything.
Like how you have to, you know, spray everything and clean it, inspect it. Do you have any guidelines for that to try to prevent,
you know,
spread?
Well, Montana is very, how can I say this?
I'm going to stop the recording, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.